loud. Okay, and it looks like we're recording. So good. So far, so good. Okay. We have 9 attendees now. So I'll give it maybe another more minute. It's 5:32. Wait for a few more people to show up.
Can we not see the attendees, Tanya? Is that it?
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they can see. So the webinar is a little different versus the monthly meeting. We're all in a gallery and they're looking in. Okay. Kind of like if you were in class, if you were taking a class.
And the attendees can't see our chair.
Oh, well, today Sandy isn't sharing. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead. Let's see, just so we can keep everything going. It's 5:32. So I'm Tanya Williamson. Seems odd talking to a screen, but I'm the outreach and volunteer coordinator. I'm going to help manage the meeting tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and put up our first slide. So y'all know that you're in the right spot. Tonight we are sharing our first inaugural community conversations via Zoom. And this is District 1. So thanks for taking your time this evening to join us and participate in the public input part of the process. One of the things you should know is that we will have a brief presentation before we go into the question portion of the evening. It'll be about 20-ish minutes or so, and it will describe who the Land Bank is, what we do, highlight some of our current projects. And after that, the meeting will be open for questions. Tonight's format is a little different than our standard monthly meetings. What we will do is we're asking people that are here tonight to type their questions so that we can kind of keep it going in an efficient manner. And if you've never done this before, you will be able to see at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A box. Type your question inside that box and then it will pop up for us. If you want to ask a specific person a question, if you could put their name in there, that would be helpful. I will read all the questions live and then the commissioners or Lincoln or staff will answer them. So for example, if you were to say, Tanya, what's your favorite preserve? And then I would answer it live. I would say, well, today it's Beaverton Marsh Preserve on San Juan Island because I really like when the daffodils are blooming. And if we have multiple questions of the same, I will consolidate those. I will do my best to get through all the questions and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask a question that wants to. If you have the option also to type your name, or I'll see your name, or you can choose anonymous when you put the question through. And if you have any other questions post the post event tonight, it'll be recorded, or you can also email me and I will put all that in a chat to you at the end in the little chat bar. So you should see that before you step out. And I think I'm just going to take a quick look at my notes that I have covered everything. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let's see, I didn't introduce our commissioners, so I apologize. We'll go through and I'll just have them wave so you can see a face to the name. I'll start with my left, which is Doug Strandberg. He is one of our District 1 commissioners. And then we have David Myland. He's the second. And then the third is Jim Skoke. Great. And then I will pass it off to Lincoln, our director.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. I'm going to share my screen now. And just take you through a brief overview of the organization, starting with the name, actually. Most people know us as the Land Bank, but originally we were the Citizens Conservation Land Bank, which was in the original ordinance and also in code. We're looking to bring that back now for a number of reasons, actually. Just reintegrating that back into the title of the organization. For one thing, it's really hard to tell what a land bank is. If you don't know, it doesn't intuitively tell you. We're not a bank, we know that much. And with a lot of people coming here, most people who come here from other communities know land banks as organizations that do tax foreclosure purchases and resales for affordable housing. And that's not what we do either. We're a conservation land bank. So you'll hear us referring to the organization as that as we go forward. Why do we have a land bank? Well, I think it's fairly straightforward. We've got increasingly critical situations with wildfires and storms and droughts and floods. As climate change progresses, we're definitely seeing some bigger and bigger issues, including political unrest. And we're not immune to that here either. We've had certainly some issues with degradation of our environment, increased fire risk, droughts, concerns about drinking water, irrigation water. And we have a lot of people who are coming here. The real estate market tells us that pretty clearly, that we've got a lot of sales happening at a really pretty phenomenal pace, as well as construction happening at a phenomenal pace. The more people we have, the more conflict we have, but also there's a great increase in demand for natural areas and places to recreate. And the more conserved land we have, it slows the demand for increased services. We do a lot to try and gauge support for what we do by surveying the community. This was a survey that was done in 2019, so pre-pandemic, but it asks residents and businesses, and we also did this with visitors, and this was in conjunction with the Terrestrial Managers Group, which is all of the conservation entities in the county. And this is what it showed us, that there's a lot of support for things like paths and bike lanes, but also significant support for acquiring more public land for a variety of purposes. So beaches, forests, places to go and hike, etc. Just very strongly supported by the community. And in case you're wondering, where is the end here? Well, if you look at public land in Western Washington counties, you can see where we rank, and it's basically dead last. A lot of the mainland counties especially have significantly more public land than we do. We'll never approach that. But what this is showing you is that there's definitely room for improvement. And particularly as we have more people coming here, having more public land is going to be important. So a little bit about the organization. Its history began in 1990 with state enabling legislation, which allowed collection of an excise tax for acquisition and maintenance of conservation areas. That state enabling legislation allowed counties to have referenda on this question. It has to be authorized by the voters. So we've had 3 votes on the land bank. And the organization has been authorized 3 times, each time for a 12-year period, so out to 2026. And that 1% real estate excise tax, that's what we're allowed to collect under that referendum, is levied on the buyer, and that is our principal source of revenue. The mandate that was created when the organization was founded is a broad one, and you can start to read through that, but you can really break this down into 4 basic ideas here. That we're about ecosystem integrity, which is managing for nature, natural areas, species, those kinds of things. Rural character, trying to preserve the feeling of the place, the landscapes that you see when you're driving on country roads, things like that. Community health, providing places for people to recreate. There's also a lot of evidence that just having nature around near you promotes health. It's really an important part of community. And agricultural sustainability. We've got quite a bit of farmland that we have preserved, trying to enable our farms to continue and people to get access to local food. So when we're thinking about projects, we go through a number of steps. It starts with planning. And so again, we do a lot of surveys of the community. We do Parks, Trails, and Natural Areas plan with county parks and public works every 6 years. This all started with the San Juan County Open Space Program, which you see here in the center of the screen. That's still in effect for the open space tax programs. But we've done a lot beyond that to really help us prioritize and target what we're trying to do, including a habitat conservation plan and a variety of other things as well. So all of these lead to this matrix that we've created, which we use to look at projects and rate them basically. So we're looking at a variety of criteria from how big the property is to whether it's adjacent to existing public lands, what are its qualities, scenic, recreational, and also whether we can find additional resources. We do quite a bit of work trying to bring additional resources to the community, to each of these projects. In terms of open space conservation and how it works, kind of looking at two different things here, the scale on the left-hand side of this screen, and we've got a broad variety of projects from large landscape scale projects where we might be looking at ecological things like resilience and connectivity, but also recreational features. And then specific features, which might be something like Turtleback fits into both of these categories. But we have a lot of other types of properties like Driggs Park and Friday Harbor, a small neighborhood open space property, or properties that provide shoreline access like East Sound Waterfront Park and Orcas. Going over to the right-hand side, the type of projects, that there are two basic things that we do. Conservation easements, which is where we purchase basically development restrictions on private property, so that the property remains in private ownership. And these are things like working farms or forests. The easement helps to keep that ownership together, so it keeps farms together, properties from being subdivided, those kinds of things. And that helps with maintaining rural character and views. Outright ownership is when we actually have preserves, when we're really looking in many cases to provide public access, which you often or rarely get with conservation easements, but also gives us the opportunity to do more specific stewardship of ecological resources. And last, we do have agricultural properties, which we lease to farmers, really trying to make it more affordable for people to continue farming in the community. Decision making, you've seen a few of the commissioners who are here tonight. It all really starts with them. They are selected by the county council. They serve as volunteers. They set policies, have regular meetings. They're looking at these projects and ultimately recommending that they are added to a budget. And the county council approves those budgets. And as a last step, the council accepts deeds when we get to closing. The staff is doing a lot of evaluation of the projects and bringing them to the commission, negotiating transactions, we seek partners and grants, and prepare budgets, transaction documents. We also keep the community informed and involved, like we're trying to do here tonight. We try and be as efficient as we can. We've really kept administrative costs quite low, averaging just over 6% over the life of the program, and securing a lot of additional funding, over $40 million since 2005, both for our projects and for projects involving some of our partners like the National Historical Park. That doesn't include property donations and other things, other sources of revenue that we're bringing in. We also make quite a lot of use of volunteers. It's a great way to introduce people to the organization and keep them involved in things that we're doing. You'll hear a lot more about that from Doug. Obviously, this past year has been quite challenging on that scale, but going forward, hopefully we'll get back more into a normal framework for having people out doing things on the properties. So what have we accomplished? We have 49 conservation easements on 7 islands. These are the properties you see here in that kind of yellow color. These are working farms, forests, etc. And we've got 38 preserves with 29 open to the public, so over 76%. A couple of the newest ones, Zylstra Lake, which many of you are probably familiar with on San Juan, also Channel Preserve on Lopez. So two properties that have recently opened to the public. In case you're wondering about the impact on your taxes, this is always a question that we get. I think it's important to keep this in perspective and recognize the fact that the taxable value of real estate in San Juan County is over $7.5 billion. That's B, billion with a B. By contrast, the taxable value of land bank properties is $35 million, and that's it. It's really a drop of the bucket, pretty much. It's less than 1/2 of 1% of the total. We do go through this exercise regularly of looking at, well, what would happen if we put our properties back on the tax rolls? Well, if you have an average property that's worth $500,000, you might see your tax bill cut by $15 a year. So something relatively minimal that we think is really worth it. These are our preserves and conservation easements on San Juan Island. You can see a lot more of this in Doug's presentation, and I'll just leave it with the fact that 13 of the 15 of these of our preserves are open to the public. Current projects. So what are we working on now? Beaverton Marsh, that's a key one. It's a big project and it's taken shape over many years. So this is outside of Friday Harbor. It's almost 470 acres. As I said, it's taking place over a long period. It's a 20-year project. So this gives you some idea of the steps that we've gone through to create this preserve over time, and also the funding that we've found and partners we've found to help make this a reality. And it's been basically a one-to-one expenditure between land bank funds and other funds, including property donations. The most recent piece of this is this 5-acre piece, which is really a key piece for the whole project. This was donated by Jeff and Ann Barker. They also donated a considerable amount of money for the purchase of the Taylor property, which is the bulk of the rest of the preserve. The reason this piece is so key is that it is the connector piece between the Lindy Community Park and the rest of the preserve. So here, what I'm showing you is basically a hypothetical phase 1, where we'd have a trail that comes out to an overlook, which will look out over the marsh, and the future phases will basically involve extending that trail down and creating a boardwalk, hopefully across the marsh to miles potentially of walking trails over time. So really a pretty amazing piece, and Doug's going to take you through what comes next now that we're done with the acquisition phase of this. We're also working on another large landscape project. This is out in the center northern part of the island, trying to connect our Katy Mountain Preserve with the National Historical Park English Camp property. And it is this Katy Mountain development parcel, which will connect us through the Roche Harbor Highlands. That property, while privately owned, does have trails that are open to the public. This piece is large, 140 acres. It's got a variety of habitats and ecological communities on it, everything from streams and a lot of mature madrona and western red cedar. These are some of the things that you'll find out on the property. From cedar groves here to wildflowers, just a really phenomenal place. And this shows you how it connects to that trail system, where it's already basically connected to it, but we don't have public access to Katy Mountain yet at all. We're going to be creating that off of Three Corner Lake Road, which runs here. So this will give people the ability to connect from Three Corner Lake Road through the new property, all the way up through the National Historical Park, and really continuing on all the way to Roach Harbor. Just a really amazing development. So something to watch in the future as we move forward with developing public access on that property. And this is just a shot from the very western edge of it. So really a spectacular acquisition. This is looking out past Henry Island toward the Harrow Strait and Vancouver Island. And I will stop there and turn it over to Doug.
All right, thank you, Lincoln. I'm getting my screen up and going here. Does everybody be able to see my screen? We're good? All right. So yeah, thank you very much. My name's Doug McCutcheon, and I've worked here with the Land Bank as a steward since 2004. So make a little adjustment here on the screen. And today I am actually going to be representing the San Juan Island Stewardship Program, which is way bigger than just me. Here are a few of the people you're likely to see out in the community from San Juan Island who do work on the stewardship side for the Land Bank. Jacob Wagner and Shauna Barrows are new field assistants. And Margot Thorpe was just recently hired as a seasonal assistant for our native plant nursery. And while they're based on San Juan Island, Eliza Habegger, Aaron Halcomb, and Charlie Binky's roles actually have them traveling around to the other islands, where we also have on Orcas Island, Peter Giazette and Kayla Seaforth, and on Lopez Island, Amanda Wiedow. And so, yeah, while we're just based here on San Juan Island today, I think it's really important to highlight the fact that, you know, as a program, we work really well together. We share resources, information, staff, tools, all of that to make the program happen. So I'd like to just take a second to kind of define what stewardship is. It's something kind of gets tossed around about a bit. So for the Land Bank, stewardship is defined just simply as the careful and responsible management of the conservation resources that are entrusted into our care. And you can see that it's quite a diverse mandate that we have. And good stewardship really begins with an intimate knowledge of the landscape and attempting to understand it within context of that full mandate. It can be really challenging to weave these values together. Just as an example, agriculture and public access are not always things that you would think about as being compatible. And it really takes a team of us with all these diverse backgrounds and skills and knowledge to navigate these challenges, along with a really heavy dose of community participation. One other thing I wanted to highlight here is that one of the things we tried to do in naming our properties as preserves rather than parks, that name is really intended to emphasize that conservation of natural resources and sort of minimizing the sort of intervention and development of sites specifically just for recreation alone. This approach really does also help keep our program lean, and it also kind of fills a niche in the outdoor recreation opportunity spectrum that's geared more towards islanders. It's a little bit more sort of informal in its nature. So the map is really similar to the one that Lincoln had up earlier, and it shows our accomplishments here on San Juan Island. I'm neglected to put in one of those newer conservation easements, the IHIA one, but I think everything else is included here. And I've also added the parcel with the red border, which is the one Lincoln was describing that is upcoming here as an addition to the Katy Mountain Preserve. The Land Bank program, stewardship program, really has two primary functions: monitoring conservation easements, and managing fee-owned preserves. The key differences between these two being that conservation easements protect resources on privately owned property, while our preserves are owned outright. Easements are monitored annually in collaboration with the current landowners, and that's to ensure that the conservation resources are being protected. Aaron Halcomb and Charlie Binky really are leads in monitoring these easements. For our owned properties, management plans guide the actions and activities that will take place on them. The process to develop a management plan is initiated following a successful acquisition, and this process can take a while. It often takes 2 or more years, as it's really critical for us to develop a solid understanding of the preserve's lands and features and its context of its setting within surrounding neighborhoods and whatnot, in order to really kind of try and make informed decisions. Community input and involvement is really a critical part of this process. Aaron Halcomb leads these efforts for the land bank. As you can see from the list here, 13 of the 15 preserves on San Juan Island currently have some form of public access, and we're working towards developing public access on the 2 remaining preserves. Sometimes all or portions of our preserves are closed to access in order to protect significant conservation resources. While public access often generates the most immediate interest, our stewardship activities actually include a whole bunch of other things, and I'm going to segue into a couple of those that Charlie and Eliza helped pull together for the presentation. While it might be obvious that the purchase of a property will protect it from the impact of conversion or development, there's actually considerable work done in the maintenance, restoration, and enhancement of natural areas in the islands. Eliza Hadwiger shared this information on some of the focal habitat and species restoration projects that we have underway here on San Juan Island, which she helps coordinate. Current major projects include Garry Oak restoration, riparian and wetland restoration, and endangered island marble butterfly habitat creation. In addition, the land bank expends considerable effort every year in the control of noxious weeds. And in a very exciting recent development, we've joined forces with the Washington Department of Natural Resources, who have successfully gotten a landscape scale restoration grant that is going to be taking place on 4 different sites across the San Juan Islands. And it's going to include 2 land bank sites, Mount Grant and Turtleback on Orcas. The Mount Grant site is going to be 15 acres. That will be sort of in the western edge of the preserve. And the other sites, Turtleback, as I mentioned, Jones Island State Park, and a San Juan Preservation Trust preserve on Decatur Island. And there'll be other additional partners helping us with the physical work on this project. It's going to be very interesting. The Samish Indian Nation, the San Juan Island Conservation District, the San Juan Island Conservation Corps, and a private forestry consultant from Orcas Island, Rain Shadow Consulting. This project is going to include a pilot program for biochar production as a means to both sequester carbon and build soil resources. Exciting stuff going on here. And in this photo, you can see some volunteers from the Soroptimists who were helping out on a oak restoration day. And I think one of the people on this meeting tonight actually is in that photo. And then also a Student Conservation Association crew, just all the different groups we end up working with. All right. So protection and restoration of Garry Oak associated habitats has been a focus for us. These habitats have really been diminished from their historic extent, both within the islands and their range as a whole. Ecologists estimate that less than 5% of this habitat remains from its sort of pre-colonial extent. As the land bank increased its efforts in these restoration areas, we discovered really quickly that the native plants that are really integral to this habitat type were nearly impossible to source, especially those that were of local source. To get past this challenge, we started a nursery, the Salish Seeds Nursery Project, and it's gone on not just to provide for our needs, but for a bunch of partner organizations. Today it's run in collaboration with the San Juan Preservation Trust, operating from their Red Mill Farm here on San Juan Island. And just want to let everybody know that, periodically there are opportunities for public purchase of plants from the nursery. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Charlie Binky serves as our agricultural program coordinator, and conservation of agricultural lands have really increased in importance as development and growth has reduced the amount of agricultural lands in the county by more than 50%. Rising property values have really made it difficult for new farmers to get established. And these lands really play a vital role in open space, community structure, long-term resilience, and are really foundational to our community's identity. On San Juan Island, portions of the Beaverton, False Bay Creek, Fraser Homestead, King Sisters, and Zylstra Lake preserves are all currently in some form of agricultural use. This includes long-term leases, short-term use agreements, and we also partner with outside agencies to provide opportunities for research and education. Landscape practices and trends change with time, but it's really want to note that the Land Bank aims to be a leader in helping San Juan County adopt sustainable agricultural practices. All right, I'm going to switch gears here and just highlight 3 major stewardship projects that the Land Bank has underway here on San Juan Island. And I want to emphasize that there's a lot more things that we have underway at any one time, and especially those that are happening on Orcas and Lopez. But tonight we're really just focusing here on San Juan. And it's also really notable that these 3 projects all are a success because of our really strong partnership with the San Juan Preservation Trust. This first image shows the Zylstra Lake Preserve in the context of the False Bay watershed. That's False Bay at the very bottom of the image. And I just want to give that as some context to the rest of this. So this is easily the most kind of complicated project that the Land Bank has taken on to date. It really represents a confluence of agricultural, environmental, and recreational values. And after approving an interim management plan, Zylstra Lake Preserve opened for public access last October. During the winter, access is restricted to just the west side of the lake, but April through September, access expands to a loop route around the lake. So that starts tomorrow. This project represents a focal effort for our organization this year, and it's going to include a lot of research and effort into water rights, dealing with ailing infrastructure, including the dams and associated bits and parts for the water systems, and looking into opportunities for agriculture, habitat restoration, and recreation. All this information will be used to generate a long-term management plan, which we anticipate going through a public process in late 2022. So keep your eyes peeled for opportunities to participate there. The Mount Grant is another really great project where the Land Bank owns the preserve and manages it, while the Conservation Trust or the Preservation Trust holds a conservation easement. The trust-led campaign for fundraising for this project generated more than half of the purchase price, and it also created a long-term stewardship fund for the preserve. And while this preserve has been open to public access since 2015, work on site enhancements is ongoing, with improvements to parking, trails, trailhead, interpret elements, all in the planning phase. As mentioned earlier, we'll also be getting that grant-funded 3-year-long Gary Oak habitat restoration project on 15 acres in the preserve this fall. And last, just to highlight the Beaverton Preserve. This is just an incredible project that's come together. And it's going to be another one that is really complicated and a lot of work, but we're really excited to kind of be diving in on this. And you might see Donna Wuthnow, who was the San Juan County Parks Superintendent. She's come on board to as a consultant to help us navigate some of the public access associated issues with this property. So the Beaverton Preserve is bound by Roach Harbor Road on the north and Beaverton Valley Road on the south. In the foreground of this image, you see the Beaverton Valley side of the preserve, as well as the forested uplands. This really highly scenic preserve contains the bulk of the largest wetland complex in the county, including some rare bog habitat. And we're just really in the early phase of planning for this site, but the vision does include protection and restoration of wetland and upland habitats, as well as those trails that Lincoln talked about that will hopefully connect into Friday Harbor and will likely be done in collaboration with Island Rec. So look for opportunities to participate in planning efforts for this property as well in the coming year. It's true, COVID really did change the nature of our work immensely in this last year, and in particular with how we work with volunteers. So we're really looking forward to getting through this and getting back to work with the dozens of volunteers who help shape these conservation lands. Opportunities include helping care for native plants at the Sailor Seeds Nursery, trail construction, signing on as a volunteer steward to help care for a specific preserve, participating in habitat restoration projects, and just on and on and on. Many, many opportunities, projects, and activities. So reach out to Tanya if you're interested in joining in with the fun with this important and meaningful work. And I'm just going to leave with this image here, with this great quote from Farrar Byrne in 1946. I think this really is true. This is the sweetest land in the whole world. Surely for playing in, for living in, just look at it. So thank you very much for spending some time with us this evening, and we'll get on with some of the Q&A.
Thanks, Doug and Lincoln. Those were great. So now if anybody that's in the attendee section, the participants, you are open for typing your questions in, and I will happily read them out loud to the commissioners and staff. And we can, or if you have comments, I can read those out loud too. And if you, now's your opportunity, I suppose. I've got the Q&A box is open. Maybe you answered all their questions already in your great presentations. I'm not sure what that sound is. Popped up. Let's see. Well, there's 14 people out there. Oh, we have a winner. Steve doesn't think. Well, let's see. I guess if people are confused, perhaps you should be able to access it. It's at the, if you hover your mouse under for the bottom of the screen of the, should be your Zoom screen. There's a little icon that says Q&A, and it has a little pop-up, like little, what do you call those? Idea bubbles, I think they're called in cartoons. So far we've had great presentations from Jennifer and no questions otherwise.
Looks like Nancy DeVoe has her hand up.
Ooh.
I'm seeing either that or she's trying to
Yeah,
give her.
thanks. I definitely can use the extra eyeballs. Here, we'll let Nancy, why don't you, I gave you I pushed a button that says you should be able to talk. You want to give it a whirl? But your mic is on. I mean, your mic is muted.
Well, it was saying chat disabled earlier. So I thought maybe it was saying that for everybody. When I clicked on chat, it said chat disabled. But now I got the question typed in, which was, you said at the beginning that your favorite preserve was Beaverton Valley, where you could see the daffodils. So I wondered where that was.
Oh, well, if you, oh, nobody took advantage of my, when you drive down the Roach Harbor side on Roach Harbor Road, and you'll pass the big oak, there are daffodils blooming out there right now.
Thank you.
I'll send you a picture.
Okay.
But yeah, so the chat, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear, chat is different than Q&A, and the chat is turned off, because sometimes it gets distracting when they all start popping up. So to the, you should have at the bottom a Q&A option, and that's where you put your question. So thanks for pointing that out.
Nancy, another place you'll be able to see some flowers popping up from an old homestead is actually at Zylstra, on the part of the trail that'll be opening tomorrow, thanks to the good work of Shauna and Jacob today. Just on the right-hand side, as you go down that main road, there's a whole bunch of flowers that are just emerging out of the ground right now.
Thank you. I'll definitely go.
Thanks, Nancy.
So since we're not having any questions at present, I think it would be great if we heard a little bit from some our commissioners, maybe just talking about things that are important to them, what their hopes are for why are they doing this? Why are they giving all their time to this endeavor?
Well, I have a question actually for one of our attendees, if I can be so bold, and I'm trying to do it on the side here, but I guess there's some issues with answers or something. But I wanted to ask Steve Hushbeck if there, to remind me whether or not there is a land bank / preservation trust component to Leadership San Juan Islands. It seems to me that there was at some point, but maybe you can answer that for me, Steve.
Tanya, am I unmuted?
No, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. Because I've been trying to find my face and I can't find my face. So
We can see your face.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent, good. Because my little light by my camera is not on, so I wasn't sure. With Leadership San Juan Island, there has been land bank and preservation trust components to some of the challenge days over the past. And we've had graduates of the leadership program that have been part of the land bank, or are part of the land bank. Hello, Tanya, and the preservation trust as well. And I think there was another one in our cohort, Tanya, that was part of the preservation trust.
Yeah, Kathleen Foley.
Kathleen Foley, thank you. This year, as hard as we tried to do a 100% Zoom program for 2021, we only got 2 applications. So we deferred the program till 2022. However, we have had 2 online seminars, which the alumni have gotten notification of, where we're just, for no cost, we are putting on some online seminars. I did Governance Day about a month ago, and we had food security at the end of January, and we have one more coming up in about probably another month. So just to keep the continuity going, but
well, let us, Steve, let us know if we can be of any assistance during this.
Yeah.
Obviously, very challenging time. I certainly want to see the program continue. But,
yeah, no, it's
another homegrown San Juan County program, and
it should definitely be part of our as far as environment, ecology, and things focused on that. Is part of the Leadership San Juan Islands program, and I'll be happy to get you involved with that in the future. So we'll see how that goes next year as far as our enrollment goes. Anyhow, does that answer the question, Jim?
yeah, thanks. I just wanted to make that connection.
Okay, very good.
I appreciate it.
Very
Thanks. Good. And thanks, Steve, for coming.
Yeah, no, it's this is part of the Zylstra Lake is going to be part of a conversation at the town council meeting tomorrow, which Senator Larson is heading up and sponsoring as well. So I'm very keen on anything we can do to get Zylstra Lake and all the effort that has gone in with the Preservation Trust and the Land Bank and various entities to make that a quasi-public place, if not a 100% public place, with certain qualifications, of course. But I'm very keen on that. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, who else is out there? Come on, guys.
Oh, I've got a question. A comment from Nancy. Very exciting to hear about the upcoming new trail development, both on Beaverton Valley and Katy Mountain. So thanks, Nancy.
Well, one thing is for sure, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. So we'll be calling you, Nancy.
And if anyone that's out on the in the audience, my air quotes there, I will put in the chat our website. If you're not already on our e-news list, you can join the email list if you scroll to the bottom of any web page on the website and sign up, we use MailChimp. That's how I get the newsletters out. So I'll put that down there.
And we should add that this is the first of this is the first round and the first webinar that we've done as a result of this crazy COVID thing. And we should announce that there are two more, one for Orcas and one for Lopez coming up. And we'll probably do this again. And if we do it, we will do it again, whether we do it in Zoom form or do it in person when we all can. We certainly will continue to ask for further community input, comments along the way. We're always open to public comment, not only at our meetings, but anytime somebody wants to make a comment to any of the commissioners or the staff, the lines are open, and all our contact information is on the website.
And I've got another hand raised. So we're being flexible. There's not that many. It's Elizabeth Norton. I've given you the power to speak in the Zoom world.
Hi, Tanya. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, great. I'm on iPad and I'm sorry, I can't type a question on my iPad. Next time I'll log on with my PC. So thank you.
Yeah, okay.
You indicated that there was a survey, I think it was done in 2019, that showed that respondents really liked more active transportation access to around the island, but especially to the preserve. So is the Land Bank or the Preservation Trust working with the County Public Works Department to create better access along the roads that you have so we can ride bikes to the trailheads and then hike on your beautiful trails?
Well, I'll take that one on. You know, we absolutely are working with Public Works to try and do those kinds of things. It takes a lot well, it's not cheap, that's for sure. But it's definitely something that's of keen interest to us. So we have a lot of conversations with Public Works about that idea. And certainly the council members have been really keenly interested in that. I can't tell you that we've got a project underway or anything of that sort, but we're constantly trying to find resources to do those kinds of things, because yeah, that's the ultimate goal really, is to try and connect some of our properties to places where people live.
And I'll jump in just to say we also have partnered with the Salmon Island Trails Committee. And on Salmon, another thing that we have a big part in and we do a lot of maintenance and monitoring and care for is the American Camp Trail. This is an effort to connect Friday Harbor with American Camp. And there's just a couple of sections now left that aren't developed, but I think we have close to a mile of both trail easement and trail license agreements. Maybe it's over a mile, actually, as I think about it, that begin with the Golf Course Road Homeowners Association and then ties into the Fraser Homestead Preserve adjacent to American Camp. And these things are kind of, as you start getting into non-motorized transportation, it's sort of on the edge of what we do. But we're definitely supportive and looking for opportunities with Public Works to see if there's ways we could be sort of partners in those efforts.
President Biden is also considering a very large infrastructure bill that, if passed, or if there's an opportunity for you folks to influence the outcome of that bill, there could be considerable more dollars invested in active transportation projects like bike lanes and whatnot. And I've hiked many of your trails, probably all of them that have been built so far. And I appreciate your work very much. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for the question and for being here.
Glad to be here.
Let's see, does maybe anyone else on a different kind of device where you can't type? You can use the raise hand and we could do it this way and have people speak. I may have to mute y'all if background noise happens. So I think I have that. There's a lot of power over here on my little section.
So Tanya, you went out on a limb to tell Pippi your favorite preserve.
Today's
wondering-
favorite.
Yeah, today's favorite. Just wondering about our commissioners. Who's got a favorite?
I'll chime in on that. And I have to confess that at least sometimes my favorite is Turtleback over on Orcas, but I don't get over there as much as I'd like to. But I do a lot of hiking. I hike every week, a couple times at least, and get out to Mount Grant at least weekly. And I'm really, really excited about the Katy Mountain project because I've hiked up in that area quite a bit, and it will be really great to have legitimate access into that portion. There are some roads and trails in there. They're on private property now, obviously, but that project is going to be a great achievement for anybody who likes to hike. Fantastic thing.
I think that my favorite one is right now is Zylstra. I love to take family members out there. They're very excited about it and really enjoyed it. And I think Zylstra, in part because of all the complications, all the interaction with agriculture and with the lake and everything, I think it's it's a tremendous opportunity, and it's a tremendous asset to the community.
My favorites, I guess I'm going to have to say, are Zylstra and King Sisters because they're within walking distance of my house. And, that's just golden. I don't know how to, it's just amazing to have that much land to go and walk on and enjoy and have it be open and wild. And it's right outside my door. And I think, thankfully, all the preserves that we have around the islands, they're right outside a lot of people's doors. And anybody that they're not close to can get to them easily. So it's just, I think more and more and more over the next few years, we are going to realize the importance of open space more so than ever. I just feel like that's what keeps us moving. And we're very lucky to live in a place where we can do this kind of thing.
Steve, you had your hand up. Did you have a question or a comment?
Just a comment, and Doug, thanks for your comments on Zylstra Lake. The town of Friday Harbor is very keen on developing that and being able to offer, visitors and our local residents, alternative in a new space to go enjoy that. I've been out there a couple of times myself, and it's just an amazing piece of property, and all the things that are going on there. It's an education that is unlike any other. A couple of times that I've been out there. Other than that, I just wanted to mention that, I really support all of what you guys are doing. I was part of the Land Bank Renewal Committee several years back, and I made some statements back then that I still hold true now, is that when I bought my house here in 2002 and got charged for that tax, I said, that's the best tax I've ever paid. So, and I still feel that way today. So anyway, thanks for your time and your efforts in continuing with what's going on here. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, Steve, I'll echo that. When we moved here in 2003 and we were looking at property, and the realtor we're working with said, you're going to pay 1% of your purchase price for the land bank. And she showed us around the island to some of the preserves, and I thought, what a great idea this is. And we were happy to pay that. And I'd be happy to pay it again. I think it's an incredible bargain.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, this has been a really interesting, that's one way to put it, year, but we've certainly seen a lot more use of preserves. And all the conservation areas across different ownerships have. I think the National Historical Park, which does keep pretty accurate records and visitation, showed that their visitation doubled to about 430,000 visits this year during COVID, during the whole shutdown. So people are really getting out there, and it's been one of the good things, just having places for people to go and seeing people take advantage of that. It's been great.
Elizabeth, I see you have your hand up again. Question or comment?
You mentioned that you're doing some management plans for some of the newer properties. Has there been any thought about providing small bike camps on some of the larger properties where it may be appropriate? Was that a survey question that you asked a couple of years ago?
Who would like to take that one?
I'm going to toss that to Doug.
It's so hard. I couldn't tell if you were looking at me. Yeah, that's a really good question. And campgrounds, camping, that's actually one of the things that is definitely sort of outside of our mandate. With that mandate of low intensity recreation, it's really been pretty clearly defined as day use only, and not any overnight. When you start having overnights with the needs for cooking and restrooms and sort of the resources you bring with and where you are, it really increases the impact and then also the management responsibilities. So yeah, not something that we're looking at doing, but definitely recognize on this island in particular, that is an issue that comes up over and over of relative to our size and how much visitation is being promoted. The amount of camping opportunities is really pretty limited, and particularly the cost of the commercial ones is pretty kind of exclusionary to a lot of folks as well. So some pretty big issues, and I think we would be advocates for things moving in those directions, but it's just one of those items that's a little bit outside of our mandate.
Thank you.
Can hear you. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
So,
good. One other comment, and I'm sorry for butting in again, but I sit on the board for the San Juan Chamber of Commerce, and I talk frequently with the Orcas Chamber and sometimes with the Lopez Chamber. And the number one item, 2018, 2019, the people ask for when they come into the center or the email or they call is, how do I get a map, and how do I find out where the trails are? And what is the best trail to go on? What's the best mountain to hike? That is the number one item the last 2 years. And it was actually a very strong item, as strange as 2020 was last year, but that's pretty significant. It used to be, when did the whales show up? And now it's how do I find a great place to go hiking? And that's pretty encouraging, I think. So thank you.
I'd like to add to that, in that I think that certainly during the last year, the preserves have have gotten a lot more use. Our Orcas Commissioner Brian mentioned that earlier, and I think that, you know, it just, like I said in my comments earlier, that this is going to, in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to become even more obvious to us as human beings, especially to those that it hasn't been obvious to, that we need to be in nature. And, you know, whether that means forest bathing or, you know, whatever you want to call it, getting outside is meaningful, and it has become even more meaningful in these months and year of COVID. And I think we just need to hang on to that and have that be one of these things that has been a silver lining in COVID, that, you know, we need, as a species, we need to be outside a lot. And so, you know, whatever we can do to preserve land and make that possible for some people, or all, you know, especially people of this county who've paid for it, it's of utmost importance. Uh-oh, lots of silence.
Well, I'm looking at my side over here, looking for raised hands and the check the Q&A, but I don't have anything. We have until 7 scheduled if anyone has anything they'd like to share. Our next commission meeting is the 3rd Friday. I think it's the 19th. So anyone that wants to, that goes a little differently. This is a webinar, this setup, and the meetings are more, it's a typical Zoom meeting where everyone logs in. So interesting, see how it goes.
Well, I think this is a great thing to experiment with, and I think you've done a great job, and I hope it works out well on Orcas and Lopez. I want to commend Doug and Lincoln on their presentations. I wish I could. I wish we could get everybody to listen to that in this county and understand what we're doing, because I think it's just incredibly important. Incredibly important in the sense of having what I call healthy community. And, you know, we're just lucky. We are lucky. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into it.
Looks like another hand from Elizabeth. You have a comment or a question?
Just a question, if you have an equity statement and if you've run into any issues related to equity or access to the properties or your programs.
We do have an equity statement, and we're working also with the county administration and council to create that across the board. I don't know that we've had any issues. We've certainly tried to. I mean, obviously the properties are open to anyone, but in terms of volunteers and work crews, and one of the things that we've pushed for is increasing participation of some of the Coast Salish. We have the Youth Conservation Corps, where we're trying to involve local kids doing conservation projects, and part of that is the Coast Salish Youth Conservation Corps. This is something that the Conservation District runs, but we've had crews come out on our properties and do a lot of work. And we've had school kids from a lot of places that we've brought out here or accommodated when they've come out here. Doug might be able to provide some more information on that.
Or not.
Mouse is bouncing around. And I also see that I believe Kayla Seaforth was on this as well, and she may want to weigh in. She's based over on Orcas Island and has really been a leader for our organization in taking this issue on to a little deeper place. But definitely a lot of interest in trying to kind of take a good hard look at what we're doing programmatically, both in terms of our administration, our practices, how we're reaching out, our signage, our hiring practices, all of those sorts of things, as well as looking for some bigger opportunities. We've done some things in the past. We just had some recent conversations. There's a neat program at the University of Washington. That's the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program that is really geared towards trying to get people with sort of a minority background involved in conservation at a really deep level. And I've been fortunate to overlap with that program a couple times, but we're kind of starting to investigate whether that might be something that we can have a little bit more consistent role with. I would say we're like everyone, human and learning to do better every day. Welcome community input in helping, guide that process, and just really, grateful for the people I work with and that we're working towards those ends. So I don't know if Kayla wants to jump in at all.
You may be driving, but I do have, one of the items that is on the near to-do list is converting the driving directions into Spanish, getting those posted. Peter Giaze, who is the Orcas Preserve steward, has been working on that in conjunction with someone else on Orcas, I believe. So that should be coming hopefully within the next few months.
Kayla's got a hand up.
4 or 5 staff.
Oh,
that
here comes Kayla.
are bilingual.
You have the ability to speak, Kayla Seaforth.
Oh, thank you. I was just typing into the chat. I was like, I don't know how to unmute myself in this setting. Yeah, not too much to add to what Lincoln and Doug said. Just know that we're taking a hard look at the ways in which land conservation locally, as well as land conservation, as a concept has really, it's kind of been defined by a certain group of people. And so we're just taking a look at that and seeing how that has affected our program and trying to work backwards from that. So it's a lot of learning, and we're trying to approach it from a humble place and just acknowledging that we have a long ways to go. So thank you for that question. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kayla. Let's see. No more hands or questions. Any other comments from commissioners? Oh, I got a Q&A here. Let's see. Looks like I have a question from Sachi. Is there any consideration of making one of the land bank properties on San Juan Island a dog-free zone?
Doug.
There isn't any current consideration of anything that's in front of us right now. Really, one of the best ways for that to come up is when we're in the middle of our management planning process. And if there's a place that's a good fit, particularly, areas that may have, significant, again, resource protection issues or whatnot, that is always makes it a little bit easier for us to take those kind of management decisions. We've done a bit of an experiment as we're operating under this interim management framework, where at Zylstra during the winter months, we've asked people to not bring dogs to the property, and then during the summer months switching to opening it. And that was really geared around waterfowl protections. And as we're learning a little bit more about the preserve and the wildlife there. So while we don't have anything currently in the planning, and we don't have anything currently in that format, I would just suggest we're open to all considerations like that for sure.
We do have the Channel Preserve on Lopez is a dog-free preserve. And that's principally because it accesses a lot of shoreline, which is really pretty vulnerable with shore nesting birds and other things. And also because of comments from the neighbors and going through the management plan process there and asking them what their interests are. So that led to that decision in that particular case, but it's certainly not going to be the last one, that's for sure. And it's just really important to hear from people. So glad to see your comment that the unleashed dogs is definitely an issue for us. We've struggled with it. I think people are still in the process of making that kind of societal change where they realize they need to leash their dogs, but it's definitely one of the number one things we do is ask people to put their dog on a leash and compliment them for doing so.
Well, and it's one of those things that's hard to enforce. It's one of those things where it comes down to self-policing, and that's always been a difficult thing. I think when people avoid the rules and they make it uncomfortable for other people, and that's too bad. It's their fault. It's not our fault. It's not your fault. It's their fault. And, we do our best to, if we do, certainly if even we do allow dogs, to make sure that they have to have a leash on them, whether that's on a trail or on a preserve. But there's always going to be people that tend to push the envelope, and it's unfortunate. That's why we have government.
So I see, Sachi, that you also have another comment. And I'll read it out loud so everyone can hear it, but that she's had some unfortunate experiences and so hasn't returned to one of the trails to Lime Kiln, which is why she thinks a specific no dog property would help. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm sorry you've had that experience.
I think if we can maybe think about having the future of Zylstra also be a no dog situation in the winter months due to waterfowl, that can be a place that you can walk and with your family and in the fall and winter months without having to deal with dogs.
And Steve, you have your hand up again, Mr. Hesselbeck?
I just wanted to make a comment that, a huge amount of our population, as well as our visitors, they've got dogs. And that's one of the reasons I come here is the wide open spaces and their dogs love coming here. My dogs love coming here, although they're not around any longer, but they were. And however, there's leash laws within the county and within the town of Friday Harbor. And it's hard to enforce those unless there's blatant disregard for them. But perhaps, signage is, you could say signage, but there needs to be maybe a higher degree of awareness that your dog has got to be on a leash. And I'm not sure if that's signage at trailheads or wherever, but that's really important because nobody wants to get into an altercation with another dog and their dog that's part of their family, unit or what have you. And that's why there are leash laws within the county that need to be followed and could be reported if they're not, as well as the town of Friday Harbor. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to chime in on this topic, and I think it'd be worth the land bank exploring a little bit more. What are the public's attitudes about this, and how much support is there for a no dog area? Because I've heard comments over the years a lot from folks who have had encounters with people's dogs off leash that are, you know, uncomfortable. In listening to the question, I realized my personal attitude about it is that it's not much of a problem for me, but I don't know what, you know, if we asked 100 land bank constituents what their attitudes are, what would we hear? I think that'd be worth knowing. And I think that Zylstra is a perfect example. We announced it, you know, no dogs over the winter. People comply with that. And I'm sure that there were folks who knew that and went there specifically because that was the condition. And perhaps we ought to be trying to offer that more somehow.
Point.
Well,
Forgot about-
I agree with you, David, and I've also, I'm aware of some problems at Limekiln. In fact, I've known a couple people that have had their dogs off leash, and I've had to mention to them that it's not suitable. And I think Limekiln especially has been a problem. So that may be one that we should take a closer look at.
Yeah, especially crowded, you know, parks and areas that are land bank or preservation trust properties. When we've got a lot of people that are involved, and it's more critical than ever that people follow the rules. And I'm not sure what measures that can be taken to either inform these people and or enforce. There's only so many sheriff's deputies around the island, but yeah, it's the leash laws are important. Otherwise, accidents happen. We all know about, heard about many of them. So,
Well,
Elizabeth, you have your hand up again. You have a question or a comment?
It's just a comment that unleashed dogs, it's often an indicator of demand by pet owners to have a place for their dogs to be able to run off leash. And many communities have tried to meet that demand by having dog parks. So I don't know if there are any dog parks within the county, but perhaps that would be an alternative location for folks to take their dogs there and not take them on the preserved trails.
There's an off-leash dog park on Mullis next to Browns. Not a real large place, but it's well used.
There's a dog park on Orcas as well.
Yeah, I think at least my experience with pet owners is that they want to have a very attractive place too, and not just a chain link fence around a half-acre area, but something with shade and benches, maybe picnic tables. It could be a social activity for them as well as for the dogs.
Right. I mean, I have a dog that goes walking with me every time I go. This is absolutely a situation where a few people ruin it for everybody.
Yeah.
Most of the dogs that I encounter with other folks hiking are on leash. Some are not and are under control. And the way that our leash law is written in this county, it's actually not a leash law. It says you have to have your dog under your control, which is a very gray area. And then, I don't know, in the course of a year of hiking 2 or 3 times a week, I'd probably say I encounter a dog that I don't want to encounter out of control, maybe twice. But I don't have small kids anymore, so that's not an issue. It certainly is a much greater issue when you've got a 5-year-old with you or something like that. But I think that we ought to look into this a little bit more. I think that we have a lot of resources that we could adjust a little bit and meet this need.
yeah, I agree, David. And I think education is a part of it, and providing information. So
I also think that people who have dogs that feel like they need to be out in the open without a leash need to have an option for that. And it should be, if it's not their own land, then they have to take what's there, because it's not a right, it's a responsibility.
Yeah.
And people that just let their dogs run wild on public land are you know, bad actors, and it's unfortunate, and that's why we need regulation. And yet to approach somebody like this, for the average citizen to approach somebody with a dog off a leash is you know, considered, is confrontational. Even if one of our staff or our commissioners do it, and we would, confrontational or not, we'll definitely make note of it and try and educate the citizen. But at the same time, you know, we have to take responsibility for our own actions.
So I will mention that on Orcas, there was a dog off leash area, which was right by the end of the runway, basically. They had to move, so we did accommodate them next to, on our Crescent Beach Preserve, next to Buck Park there. We're able to create an area for that to happen, which is really very much at the edge of our mission, because we're much more about passive recreation than about creating facilities. But it was a good, I think a good cooperative enterprise, really. That was in part of the preserve we had problems with. You know, it was a place for people to go and hang out and do all kinds of stuff. And so creating that little corner area there and allowing it to be an off-leash area has really worked out well.
That's great, Lincoln. Thank you for doing that. 'Cause it's an important part of what people expect. So, but people also have to follow the rules.
I'd like to ask that Sachi bring this topic to the next land bank meeting where all the commissioners will be there and we can discuss it. I mean, this is properly a meeting topic for the full commission, and I think it needs attention. So I don't know.
I also noted it. We can add it to the perhaps in a future agenda item or share it with the commissioners. But I have a note of it.
I agree, but I also want to point out the gravel pit here in San Juan Island is getting more and more use. I'm using it a lot more, especially since Zylstra was closed to dogs. And so that's certainly something to get out to, maybe out to the public, because there's probably a lot of people that don't know that the gravel pit, it's a mile long trail on the top, and it's a great resource.
It is, and it's technically an off leash area with Allen Rec, but that's not all that well known, and I'm not sure how much we want to make that public, but it is a great resource. And Doug, you're right.
Yeah, probably don't want to make it too public, but I actually think, I think it is a resource that maybe needs more use.
So we've got another question with a different topic from Jennifer, which is there land bank interest in reclaiming tidelands currently in private ownership for conservation?
That's a complicated one. We do own some tidelands, and that picture is very cloudy, and unfortunately, unlike places like Oregon where the tidelands are publicly owned, we've got this mix of public and private. But we're certainly open to that idea of acquiring tidelands. We've done that. It just depends on the situation and in that particular location, but it's definitely something we look at.
So we've hit the 5-minute mark, just to give everyone a heads up. Sorry, Doug.
No worries. As I say, the State Department of Natural Resources has also been actively reclaiming some tidelands and bedlands, and in particular ones where the ownership kind of had faded away, or people had forgotten that they had tidelands. So I think that they've been increasingly interested in trying to reclaim those, because really the purpose of a lot of those private tidelands was to promote aquaculture, which largely isn't happening at this point in time. Or if it is, I think the state has interest in having a managerial role in some of those tidelands.
So of our attendees that are still here on the meeting, does anyone else have a comment that we haven't heard from or a question? We've got about 4 minutes till 7.
So I think Sachi did ask when the next Land Bank Commission meeting is, which is the 19th, correct? Friday.
I don't have the calendar in front. That sounds right. The third Friday of the month. I should have said it out loud. I just messaged it. I answered her.
It's actually going to be the 16th, April 16th, since tomorrow's the 1st.
And that we do that on Zoom. And so the agenda usually comes out for those meetings about the Monday before, and the Zoom link is attached to the agenda, and I have that on our calendar as well. And if you're on the email list, we can get that to you that way as well. Well, it looks like last call for questions, comments. Well, thanks for everybody that joined us tonight. I keep looking over here because that's where the column is with the panelists, but and thanks to all my commissioners and staff for helping me out.
Thank you, Tanya. We appreciate all your efforts doing this. We know it's been a big challenge, this whole technical mess that we're in, but it came off well, so thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Tanya.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you all. Okay, well then I'm going to end the recording, and everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Mhm.